Hi, everyone. Welcome to React Europe. My name is John, and today I'll be talking about the state of React and how it relates to animations. So, who am I? I'm a software engineer currently working at Adetutu. I also contribute to React Spring, which is a React animation library, and I was heavily involved in implementing the UX API for React Spring. So, if you would like to keep up to date with me, keep like being to know what I'm doing, or just look at some of the things I post online, you can follow me on Twitter at John Adetutu 93. So, what is React? I assume majority of us watching this already know what React is. But for those of us new to React, React is simply a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. React takes a decorative approach to creating UI. So you can create simple components that are a function of state and local state and props and compose these together to create even more complex UI. Um, just some statistics about UI, about React right now. So React currently has approximately 8 million weekly downloads in NPM, making it one of the most downloaded UI libraries. The React DevTools has a 33,000 weekly download on NPM as well, and it's very useful for debugging our React code. On GitHub, the React repo currently has 148,000 stars, which is easily one of the most starred GitHub repos out there. And we have over 1,300 awesome people that have at some point devoted some of their time to improving React. This just goes to show how awesome the love of React community is. And I think this will only get better moving forward. And that's truly amazing. So since React was created and over time, the React team has consistently been improving the React library and constantly adding new features. One of the new features that I'll be talking about today is the UX API. And yeah, UX are awesome. Everyone loves UX, I like to think. I love UX. So for those of us familiar with React, most likely know of the new UX API added to the stable release in React 16.8. So before UX, handling complex UI interaction meant we had to go through some form of indirection to encapsulate reasonable logic to apply to our UI layout. So patterns such as render props emerged to sort of handle this problem. Now, one of the major drawbacks for the render props pattern was that within what was meant to be our layout part of our code, we were effectively having components that just handled logic and had no relation to our layout. So we couldn't have a sort of one-to-one mapping between our code and our layout because of this extra layer of indirection to capture reusable logic. Now, obviously, this made our code harder to read, amongst other issues. Now, the UX API has tried to solve this. It means we have a more linear a way to express intent. It also helps us make the separation between our UI interaction logic and our UI layout quite clear. So what do I mean by this? Let's look at some code. So um, React Spring provides some primitives for us to control animation, right? One of these primitives that React Spring provides is called trail. And what does trail do? Trail takes, let's assume we have a list of things or a list of items or a list of UI components that we would like to sort of trail each other. And we would like, rather than having this trailing controlled by timing, meaning, let's say we want the first to start at zero, like 500 ms, we want the second item to start at 1 second, and so on and so forth. Because React Spring is a physics-based library, we can have each spring control the next spring, the movement of the next spring. And so anyway, Trail tries to solve this problem by obviously providing us with the render props pattern. And so looking at this code now, we have, so We have a toggle that would like to show of what state we like our trail to be in, either the end state or the beginning state. And we have implemented the trail in that we want, so for example, we want the start state for each item to have an opacity of 0 and an X start state of -100. And this would, you understand why we set this to this these values soon enough. So, and we have our animation end values as opacity. So when the toggle is set to true, or when the toggle is true T, we set our opacity to 1, else we give it an opacity value of 0.25. And the same with X, once if the toggle is true T, we set our X value to 0, and or we set it to 100. We also pass an items array. And what this items array is a way to provide the trail to know how many items you're trying to trail together. And so we can pass these items back to you so you can render appropriately in your UI. And how does this work? As you can see, we have this trail component that is literally a, a logic abstraction to drive animations. It doesn't have any relation to our UI. And this is all our UI code right here. This is what is being rendered on the screen in this entire piece of code. Just this little bit of stuff. And we pass the item to you. We also pass the animated values to you. And as you can see, we use this by passing this animated values to the style prop, where we set the opacity. And we've interpolated through the X value to transform it into a proper transform value. So how does this look like? So as you can see, in the first instance, we have our initial state as where all our boxes start have an opacity value of 1, the start opacity value of 1, and they're transformed at 0. Like so, their origin, their X origin, the top left origin starts at 0, and once we flip the toggle switch, you can see now we're moving this to the left, and the opacity is at 0.25, and the X origin, the X transform starts at 100% after 100% of the value of the width, basically, of our box component. So as you can see, this trail animation, it starts the first one, and the remaining box follow the trail, follow the first spring. They're controlled by the first spring. But the problem with this interaction is we have this piece of logic right here that it has nothing to do with our layout. It is just for applying logic. And if we wanted to nest some more trails, or if we had if each of these boxes then had components or items within them that wanted to trail, or something wanted to and that animation that wanted to drive, it meant we'd have to add another layer of indirection in here within the animated div for, first of all, controlling the animation, and then the UI. This is something that once we start adding like 4, 5, 6 layers of indirection, it makes our code really hard to read. So how does Ook solve this problem? So Ooks makes it easy for us to separate, like I said, makes it easy for us to separate our UI logic, our UI interaction logic from our layout logic. And how does this work? So React Spring as exposes a useTrail hook for controlling this. What we do is initially we'll pass the length of the items that we want to trail together, and the same as the trail component itself, we'll pass the animation config, so the from, opacity, and the X. The one major difference with this approach that we've taken is you can pass the final animated values directly to the animated config, as opposed to within a to key in the animated config. And what does this leave us with? It means, as you can see right here, we don't have any extra, our UI layout here, our UI code here, almost matches one for one with what we see on our screen. So what does this mean? We have our div, which is this blue big container right there. And we have our little boxes inside this container that is driving that represent our animation. There's no extra code to do this. And this makes it so intuitive for us to create stuff because our code is much easier to read. Our code is much linear. And if we wanted to reuse some of this logic, we can easily take this out and create a custom MOOC, something like this. So let's create a custom MOOC. So we say use simple trail, which takes a toggle value and returns our use trail. So what is this? As you can see, this custom hook can live anywhere in our app. We don't need to know about it. We don't need to know how it works. We just know that by taking a toggle value and assuming that all our items are going to be for of a length of 5 for some reason, we can just import it into any UI component of our. As you can see, this easily helps us separate, like create separation of concerns where we have UI interaction logic living somewhere separately, and we have our actual UI component being an exact replica of the UI layout. So yeah, it creates this really amazing way for us to express our intent, and it's just pretty cool. So one of the other patterns that emerged from implementing the React Spring Hooks API was orchestrating animated animation primitives. And what do I mean by this? Um, let us say we add, okay, let us say we add a problem that we're trying to solve, right? We want to, so picture a scenario. We have a box. We have a box, and inside our box, we have items within it. Now, our box can be in an open or closed state. And when our box is transitioning from a closed state to open state, we want the box to open completely first. And then we want our items to transition in. Now, it's this something like this is not easily intuitive to implement in when we using random props. But with hooks, this provided it provided a clear, intuitive method for us to do this. Now, as you can see, I have a use spring hook driving our container animation, and I have a use transition hook driving the item transition and transition animation. So in order to orchestrate this together, we'll pass a ref, something to all the animation controller, a reference to all the animation controller for both our Spring driver and our transition driver. So say Spring ref equals use ref. And then we'll pass it to the use Spring config like so, use ref, Spring ref. Then pass it like so. Now, once we pass refs to our use our animation hooks, we are essentially telling React that, React Spring that we would like to take full control of our animation. So as you can see, once I pass reps, nothing happens because our animation is on pause. We actually need to manually control our animation flow for when they're going to start, when they're going to stop. This gives us more granular control on how to do this. Now, because of common patterns that emerge, which is chaining animations together, React Spring exports a really nice code hook to do this, and that hook is called use chain. So what USEN does is it simply takes an array of um, animated values of reference to animated values, and based on the order of this array, it sort of chains them together. Like, so what I mean by this is once animation A stops, animation B starts. So how does this work in practice? So we've got say we've got an array, right, to pass to use chain. We want our our spring animation to start first, and we want our our transition animations to go right after. We can pass this sort of array like so to use chain, and use chain just does this magic. Does this magic. Now, as you can see, we it's working now again. But now, as you can see again, we have the same problem in that when we are closing, use chain is opening the container first, and then the animations are following after. But when we are closing, because of the current order we have, whereby spring is going first and transition is coming after, when we're closing it, the transition out doesn't work at all because it is waiting for the spring transition to finish. So the way we can solve this is simple. We take our open, knowing that when we open, we want the spring to go first and then the transition to go after. And we can invert this order for the opposite case, for the inverse case. This is simple as this. So let's see how this works. Now, see, opens, transitions in, then transitions out and closes, right? That is amazing. As you can see, this waits for each animation to finish before the animation starts. One of the common patterns that we noticed is we would like to provide users a way to use time steps to control this, not just an absolute value of waiting for the animation to finish. And this is done by passing another array, which represents the time step start of each animated controller. Now, this time step is in multiples of seconds. So say, for example, we wanted our spring ref to start immediately. We pass it a value of 0 in the position. Now, in this second position, our transition ref, we want it to start 500 milliseconds after. We pass it 0.5, a value of 0.5. And say the inverse, because transitions take a bit longer to animate, we want to give it a little bit more time to finish before we continue. Let's say we pass it, give it 0.8 milliseconds. Oh, sorry, we give it 0, and then we give the spring ref to start at 0.8 milliseconds. I mean, now, okay, let me reduce this time just so we can see the clear difference. I'll give this 200 milliseconds. Now, what this does is, let's see how this works. So, on open, we have the container animation starting, and 200 milliseconds later, the transition animation is starting. But when we're closing, the transition starts, and as you can see, the container animation takes a bit longer. Some takes a bit longer to start. This just gives us really nice granular control of how to build beautiful fluid animations within React. This is, if we're going to try to implement something similar to this with the React, the components using random props, it would be very difficult to implement. Anyway, so yeah, in conclusion, hooks are pretty awesome. So, and like all things, what can be improved in React relating to animation? So React has provided us with great tools to build beautiful user interface with rich fluid animations. We are able to orchestrate animations together to create some of the best user experiences out there, and that is pretty cool. But there's something that has always been really tricky to implement, and that is animating our transitions. And why is this tricky? This is tricky because there is simply no way to tell React that, okay, this company is about to leave the DOM. Can you wait can you wait for a bit or wait based on some sort of function that before you actually remove this animation so we can, smoothly remove this out, remove this. There's currently no way to do this in React. And yeah, there is an ongoing discussion on this, on how this can be solved within React. You can reference, if you want to participate in this discussion, you can look at this, the Fed on Mountain RFC. Some of the people participating are the creator of the React Spring Animation Library, Paul, James, and the creator of the Frame and Motion Animation Library as well. Feel free to join this discussion and let's try to see if there's a way we can solve this problem. So this is so based on some of the links I shared in this during this talk, you can access them here. So this is just you can look, if you want to know more about React, you can check the getting started sections within the React offshoot documentation. If you want to see some other cool React Spring and React Spring examples, you can check this out. There's some pretty cool ones, so let's check it out. And if you want to join the conversation, you can check the Defender Mountain RFC. So once again, I want to thank everyone for joining us at React Europe today. My name is John Adetutu, and I am going to be your MC for today. Have a great day, everyone.
So John, a few of us were wondering, I know that your talk took a little bit of a turn and was a little bit more React Spring animations heavy, but we just wanted to get some of your thoughts on the current state of React and kind of where things are right now. How does that kind of relate to your project and making React Spring animations work with hooks? Maybe if you can kind of expand on any of those topics.
Well, yeah, so with the introduction of the hooks API, that was kind of when I dug into the React Spring animation library myself. So, and what I found out was when I was creating, or when we're implementing this API, it made a lot of these things, like a lot of the things we're trying to do, very easy to accomplish. Now, the one thing that was hard is still the transitions, like I mentioned at the end of my talk. And the way we solve this is we try to solve it in a very convoluted way, which still has a lot of issues. Now, I can't, if I try to go into how we did this, it's going to take quite a bit of time. So if you do want to know more about this, I suggest you shoot me a private message on Twitter if you want, and I'll be more than happy to follow, go through the code. But one thing I am currently looking at right now is to see if the current React concurrent mode is, we could solve this using React concurrent mode. So I've been playing around with concurrent mode myself, and the mental model about it being a sort of Git version, the Git versioning model kind of works in my head. And using suspense as a way to delay updates based on a function, I'm thinking, can we solve this by having our animation duration or animation function, animation controller, act as a way to control the suspense of this? Now, this is just like something I'm thinking about currently, and I've not implemented this yet, but I'll continue working on this over the next few months. Hopefully, I have some progress behind this. Hope this answers your question.
Well, I think it gets there a little bit. I got another question for you. I know that this is one of your first talks that you've given. By the way, I think it went really well, and I really was able to follow along everything. And I'm kind of more interested in React Spring animations now, especially that it works with hooks. But can you tell us a little bit about kind of how you got started working with React Spring team?
Yeah. Oh, sure.
And also, where are you calling from right now? Where are you calling in from?
Can you stop sharing your screen,
London. Oh, yeah, I'm calling from London, United Kingdom.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so my
So,
question was kind of how you got started with the React Spring team.
well, this was so. Okay, yeah. When I when React, the experimental API, like which was first released as an experimental API, I think React Spring was one of the first animation libraries to implement some form of hooks. So, but at the time, only USpring, which is the simple controller, the simple Spring controller, was implemented. And the creator at the time said this was like re-implementing the other primitives, which is trail, transitions, as hooks versions was very, very tricky to do. And so he did not do it at the time and he said he was going to do it maybe at some point later. And I have always used React Spring in all my projects, both personal and at work as well. So it was one of those things where when the hooks, I was trying to figure out how hooks work. And I was really interested to see if I could use hooks to drive animations. So I took it upon myself. I wrote let's see,
Nice.
um, a pretty simple gist for how. So I'm just going to share my screen real quick.
Sure.
Just trying to play around with see if there was a way I could transform I could translate the transition component itself within React Spring to use hooks. And so I created this. Sorry, I created this gist and I shared it with Paul. This was about 2 years ago. A very, very naive implementation. As you can see, it says a very naive implementation of transition hook with React Spring. So I created this, shared it with Paul. He was really excited about it. He was like, wow, this is pretty cool. And this was in December of 2018. And we're like, okay, if I can use transitions, maybe I should try to see if there's a way I can figure out how the rest of it works, not just transitions. And so we took some time in December up until January when released like version 7 and also version 8 as well. And we just plowed through this. It was pretty fun. I must say it was actually pretty fun. That was also my first sort of contribution to open source as well. So for a first contribution, it's actually pretty cool as well.
Yeah. Isn't that great? Like your first contribution turns into something that yeah, you end up doing a lot of work on. We had another question in the Discord from Ben, and he says,
hi, Sean, first.
Oh yes, hi Sean, and awesome background. Is that okay? Oh, on question.
So it's supposed to be. Can you hear me? I don't understand.
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, cool. Yeah, hi. And enjoyed the talk. And sorry, I joined so late because I couldn't figure out. I didn't know I was supposed to join like right away. So
no problem.
Awesome talk. Yeah. You wanna keep going in your question?
Sure. So Finn asks, I assume animations are based on ticks done with JS. Do we have a way of dealing with slow devices and have either simpler animation or disable them totally without impacting the UX? And I can repeat that again. He assumes that animations are based on ticks done with JS. Do we have any way of dealing with slow devices and have either simple animations or disable them totally without impacting the user experience?
Well, I think this question or this sort of problem is mostly going to be handled by how you design your user experience or your UI, like what your user experience flow is like. I think when designing your user experience, you'd have to take this into consideration as well. So you design a layout that works very well when there's animations, but also doesn't look that much impact without animations. So what does this mean? It means like you have a very, very nice layout that, that translates very well for both with animations and with animations. Now, React Spring, we've tried to make sure that we've created an animation library that doesn't have that as much impact as possible. And we've made this native in a way that animations updates don't trigger state updates. So animations are done purely within DOM space. Like we don't have any React tree reconciliation going on. Everything is done within the DOM space. Like there is no constant update. So what this does is translates and makes it so that our animations are super fast and fluid, if that makes sense. And because we wrap our animation controller within a request animation frame, this also helps with regards to lag, and knowing that we make sure that we're not updating animations at the same time that some DOM layout is being triggered currently.
Perfect. And so just give us a real quick, your Twitter real quick, just in case Finn has any more questions about that. He wants to go more in detail, and then we'll get on to Sean.
Yes, so my Twitter is at JOHN ADETUTU93. So that's at John Adetutu 93. I would share it in the, should I share my screen and just show it in the.
Why don't you pop it into the Discord, and that way everyone can click into there. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll do that. Yeah.